What a handsome young man. While I'm flipping over here, we had an intern tell Sean and I a couple of years ago. This was a 22-year-old. This isn't scripted. Y'all get over it. Don't have a heart attack. She looked at us, and she was 22 years old, and she said, all I want to know is that when I wake up in the morning, that there's someone that loves me. I want to get a birthday card, and I want to get a Christmas card. And that right there should keep everyone in this room awake at night. It should keep us all awake at night. These kids need a forever family regardless of how old they are. Okay, I'm not going to cry. Okay. So, of course, they've given this Mississippi girl this name, Globichar. I hope I'm pronouncing that right because, you know, I can't help it. Our next presenter is one of those lawmakers who sees a problem and acts quickly to craft a policy solution. As importantly, she has the right mix of passion, persuasion, and good old-fashioned tenacity to get that solution over the finish line. A few years ago, Senator Amy Klobuchar, am I saying that right? Is that close? Tooey, twooey, tomato, you know, whatever. Come on up, Amy. Come up here while I talk about you. Amy met a family from Minnesota who had decided to open their home to 9 brothers and sisters from the Philippines. I should have made the movie about them, whose parents' death had left them as orphans. To her surprise, their biggest concern was not how they would parent their new family of 14, but rather how to tell their oldest 2 of the 9 children that the U.S. immigration law prevented them from being adopted with their siblings. She immediately filed legislation to change that law, worked with her colleagues to get it passed, and less than a year later, all 9 children joined their new family in America. Whoop, whoop. Yep. In 2006, Amy became the first woman elected to represent the state of Minnesota in the United States Senate. Throughout her career, Amy has been a champion of adoption and supporting adoptive families and children. She has worked closely with Senator Landrieu to help boost post-adoption support services by introducing the Supporting Adoptive Families Act and fought to make the adoption tax credit permanent. Please join us in welcoming Senator Amy Klobuchar. Her mom should have named her Smith.
Thank you, Lee. Well, thank you, everyone. I can't tell you what an inspiring break this is from the shutdown, okay? So I want to thank you for giving that inspiration to go on and do some good things, which we need to do, and to remember once again that what unites us in this country is much bigger than what divides us. I want to thank my great friend, Senator Mary Landrieu. I was listening very carefully, Alan, to your beautiful remarks when you said the world doesn't need more politicians, okay? And then you said the world needs more angels. But Mary is a politician and an angel, all right? So remember that. Senator Roger Wicker, my great colleague from Mississippi, and all of the congressional members that are here today. Kathleen, thanks for your team at CCAI and everything you're doing, your tireless effort to help children all over the world. We're here for the same reason. We share the same belief that every child should have a safe home and a loving family. I come from a state, the state of Minnesota, where in the words of our poet laureate Garrison Keillor, right? The women are strong, the men are good looking, and all the adoptions are above average. We actually have the highest rate per capita of international adoptions in the country. We are very proud of the work that we do. And in just the last few years, we've seen families open their homes to so many children, including that family from the Philippines. I was asked to give an award today to someone who's incredibly special, and it's a special award. It's named after someone who's no longer with us, a Minnesotan, Paul Singer. Paul was a senior vice president at Target, but we know him for his commitment to helping others. After his untimely passing in 2010 and all of his work with CCAI, the Congressional Coalition on Adoption announced the creation of the Paul Singer Memorial Award to be given to a business or government leader who has gone beyond their defined corporate or agency roles to advocate for better adoption and foster care worldwide. Now, it is my sincere pleasure today to present the 3rd ever Paul Singer Memorial Award to Rita Benson LeBlanc. As owner and vice chairman of the New Orleans Saints, okay, that's a little tough for me as a Viking fan. I need to digress just for a minute. First of all, you should know, Rita, that my dad, his whole career, he was a sports writer. He's now 85. And he wrote a book 30 years ago called Will the Vikings Ever Win the Super Bowl? And sadly, it is still relevant today. You should also know, Rita, that Mary Landrieu and I had a major bet on that Saints-Vikings game, that playoff game that many of you remember. I lost, and I had to make gumbo. And roux is really hard to make. I then had to wear a Drew Brees jersey, march through the Capitol, and bring that gumbo to Mary's office in front of her cheering staff. I presented her with the gumbo that I had made. What does she say? "Oh, this is a little bit mild. This tastes like Minnesota gumbo." And she proceeded to take an entire bottle of Tabasco sauce and dump it in my gumbo. This is a true story, Rita. Now let's hear about Rita. Enough about me and Mary. 4 years ago, Rita, who, by the way, she and her grandfather have led the New Orleans Saints to win the Super Bowl in 2010 and helped bring the 2013 Super Bowl game to the Crescent City. Well, 4 years ago, she had the inspired idea to have the New Orleans Saints dedicate one home game every November to celebrating adoption. The activities she had worked with the team on include public service announcements highlighting New Orleans area kids waiting for homes, on-field presentations of families who adopted as part of National Adoption Day, the promotion of adoption-related nonprofit organizations on game day tickets. Through these efforts, just under 500,000 people have been made aware that there are children in foster care who need families. Rita has also personally supported the adoption-related work of the Saints players. And that's not all. Because of her outstanding leadership, 2 additional NFL teams have committed to also dedicating a home game in November to raising awareness of adoption. And I can tell you, Rita, the Vikings are not far behind. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our Paul Singer Award winner, Rita Benson LeBlanc, to the stage.
Thank you, Senator. Awards are so embarrassing. They remind you of all the things that you need to keep on working on because there's so much more that can be done, or at least that's how it works out for me. I'm deeply humbled to be honored here. I attended in 2010, had a wonderful time with my dear friend, Senator Mary Landrieu. I think you can tell as each person comes up here, if their lives have crossed Mary's, then you know that if you're up here, it's because you're one of those people that just doesn't tell her no, which, having known her mother, it's just another family trait of why you just don't. Mary had invited me to an equestrian event a few years ago, and her mother was there, and she just sort of slapped me on the face, which only moms can do, and said, "You're a doer like Mary." And so I thought, okay, of course, I'm in that group, and I'll be tirelessly doing this for the rest of my life. So the thing that I admire so much about CCAI is the family relationships. As far as the quote, "You don't have to be born to someone for them to be a part of your family." To me, it's a tribe. It's the group of all the people that you surround yourself with. And adoption has been very personal to me. It has touched my family, my friends, and also my work colleagues. So the stories that I was going to share are very personal. And my mom is here to say thank you, and she's not supposed to look at me because she's crying. So I'm really better at this, but I have my kryptonite down there because she doesn't always get to come to events with me. But it's been a real pleasure to have her here. The parents of my friend Leah had 3 healthy and gregarious little boys, but their mother really wanted a little girl. And so she got a curly red-haired little Spitfire. A generation later, when a young woman in their hometown was struggling, Leah and her husband adopted adorable twin boys. At work, our top ticket salesman is from an adopted situation, And then later, our in-house legal attorney, Vicky, was considering China when she wanted to start her family and adopt a little girl. When she first started embarking upon this process, having experienced the things that we'd done through the team, she reached out to Senator Mary Landrieu's office, and she helped make those initial international connections. A few years later, after they had adopted Mary Rose, they wanted to make sure that Mary Rose had a little sister, and so they went again to China in terms of making that adoption process happen. At the time, they identified Jill Marie as another toddler, but through the complications that were happening because of the Beijing Olympics, China put a freeze and a lockdown on a lot of communications and programs, including their adoption process. At a critical time, our entire office was engrossed in this process, so much so that my grandfather, being a Republican that he is, reached out to some friends, and President Bush wrote a letter, and that was another part of the process, along with Senator Mary Landrieu, and letters and whatever we could do to continue the process. It was another eye-opening experience, just in learning this story of how gut-wrenching it can be to have identified your child, to connect and know that you want this little girl, Jill Marie, to come and live with you, and yet know that she's that far away and you can't get her home. Everything, good wishes, and all this support prevailed. You know, when I think back on that, there are so many people who never have met Jill Marie. I get to see her at football games and participate with our Junior Saint Stations program, but of all these people who help, you don't always get to connect with those faces. And that's another thing that's inspired me by CCAI, is how many collaborative agencies are here. Of all the people that I've participated with, and as I learn, it's these intimate stories that we share, and just in some of the random conversations that we have, how we connect people that can help, either be it international or on the local home front. With our Saints games, one of our first presentations was actually for our general manager, who'd adopted 2 little girls from Mexico. And then, as mentioned before, there's a football player that y'all previously honored. Well, he used to be a Saint. So I'm wearing a Super Bowl ring right now because Scott Vegeta's Japanese parents adopted a little blonde boy that kept growing and growing and growing, and then became an NFL linebacker. And he was a part of our 2009 season, and of course our 2010 victory at the Super Bowl. He participated with those PSAs that the congressman mentioned, and also continued that tradition with our Saints November Awareness Month. We have Jimmy Graham, who's igniting our football field and fantasy football leagues across America as one of the most famous tight ends right now. Jimmy was caught in a terrible foster care situation. He'd been bounced around and he had been abused in a foster care facility that he'd been housed in. Through a very positive program that he was with, one of the volunteers, much like Luann and Sean Toohey, just couldn't see this bright young man and not take him home. She never formally adopted him, but she became his family. He went on to accept a scholarship to the University of Miami. He played basketball. He's a brilliant young child. And then the president, she decided that he really should be playing football, to which this wisdom I'm deeply appreciative that he listened to. So not all stories end up with adoption and a famous football player, but there's a surprisingly abundance of them in the room, or connections and stories to that. On our ticket stock, which goes to over 70,000 people every game, and because most of our tickets are to season ticket holders, we're able to recognize charities. We started with one season, and the next season, instead of the charity theme, my staff thought that they could put football players alone on the tickets. I said, absolutely not. And to really put the fear of anything in them, I told them I'd promise the senator. And of course, all the charities had to stay, but November month is always adoption, and we always pick a great game, and Mary comes down, and we honor families, and we celebrate these stories. I'm so deeply honored to be mentioned and acknowledged for this. What I do is just use our platform to showcase important works, but it's so deeply personal to receive an award that was named for a friend of this organization, and one of his friends introduced himself to me tonight. So I get excited about football like a lot of you. I was so impressed because Hugh Jackman actually knew we were 5-0, which is pretty exciting. And Willie Robertson hasn't missed a home game yet. He's always on our sidelines. So I hope all of you enjoy your evening tonight, continue to cheer for our team, and know that as the Saints play, we will be supporting adoption and encouraging our other owners to support this effort as well. Thank you so much.
That's nice, and I love the Saints, but just if anyone has forgotten, the Baltimore Ravens are the current and reigning World Super Bowl champions! I can boo all you want. Truth hurts. I mean, it's just what it is. But, Rita, it is a contract year for Michael, so if we need to talk, we can talk. Yeah, contract year this year. And he's playing great.
Yeah, who needs agents
No.
when you have parents?
So, there you go.
I think we're in trouble for that one.
Well, that's okay. Okay, here we go. Rita and Amy, we can settle this little debate later. As many of you know, on December 27, 2012, President Vladimir Putin, that's another name, signed a law that tragically affected the lives of over 700,000 children living in Russian orphanages. By banning international adoption by American citizens, the Russian leader not only prevented hundreds of thousands of children from finding their forever families that they need and deserve, he tore apart hundreds of families who have already been formed.
Our next presenter was so bothered by the senselessness, and that's a more than two-syllable word, and it was in my contract we wouldn't have those. I had one earlier, and obviously he pointed out how bad I messed that one up.
Senator Franks, man, he got
Senator Franks killed me. Did we beat them on the way to the Super Bowl? Probably. Senator Roger Wicker of Mississippi
It's our people.
recognized that while every child has the right to a family, there was no one protecting the basic human right when a country suspends inter-country adoption. So he changed that. This past summer, Republican Senator Roger Wicker and Democratic Senator Ben Cardin led the U.S. delegation to the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe in proposing an internationally accepted safeguard. Thanks to his good work, the OSCE passed a resolution that protects these, I'm not even going to try that one.
What?
Oh yeah, and you're not going to try it either.
Nascent
families, too many syllables, from being torn apart in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, our homie, Senator Roger Wicker.
Thank you, Leanne and Sean. Well, this is a night to celebrate the family and to recognize angels in adoption, but it's also an evening where a politician or two can admit to being a little bit starstruck. And that's me right now. And yes, Leanne, the Ravens are a great team and the reigning Super Bowl champions, in part because of your little boy, Michael, a terrific offensive lineman from Ole Miss. But if I might go back a generation to 1981, I was an aspiring staffer here on Capitol Hill, closely following the Ole Miss basketball Rebels as they won their first ever Southeastern Conference championship. Leanne Roberts was a cheerleader, and her boyfriend, Sean Toohey, was setting the NCAA record for career assists. An assist, as most people know, is an act of selflessness, and that is 3 syllables, Sean. Dishing the ball to a teammate for the overall good of the team. Sean and Leanne Toohey have been known for a long time in our part of the country for their unselfish contributions to important causes. I'm a big Sean and Leanne fan, and what an honor to participate with them tonight. Sean and Leanne Toohey, great folks. And wow, what a thrill to introduce tonight's first 2013 Angel in Adoption awardee, Deborra-lee Furness. She's a movie star. Come on up. She's an award-winning television actress. She's performed under the bright lights in New York City, and she is the absolute object of devotion from People Magazine's 2008 Sexiest Man Alive. During her 17 years of marriage to Hugh Jackman, she somehow managed to declaw Wolverine. She's kept Jean Valjean on the straight and narrow, and she's now in the process of keeping P.T. Barnum humble, all the while being the mother of Oscar Maximilian Jackman, age 13, and Ava Elliott Jackman, age 8. Folks, don't we think it would be a good idea if Hugh Jackman and Oscar Jackman stood and received our applause tonight? Woo. He can sing, he can dance, and Hugh, I wanted you to get that role as Abraham Lincoln, but I did the best I could. Now, adding to these considerable attributes is Deborra-lee's passion for children without families. She has traveled all over the world with the message that all children deserve a chance to live in a fulfilled and joyous life. 5 years ago, she began National Adoption Awareness Week in her native Australia to help raise community awareness, encourage reform, and engage Australians in issues affecting adoption. As Executive Director of the Worldwide Orphans Foundation Australia and an ambassador for World Vision, Deborra-lee continues to be a leading voice in the global effort to reduce the number of children in the world who are living without a family. But it's all about family. Her hunky Aussie husband put it this way. These are Hugh Jackman's own words. She's the greatest, I'm the lucky one. She's very wise, a great actress, and a great wife and mother. So thank you, Hugh and Oscar, for supporting her and for sharing her with the international community. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my sincere pleasure to present tonight's first 2013 National Angel in Adoption Award to Deborra-lee Furness.
It's a big room. Thank you very much. Thank you. You're funny. You're a hard act to follow. Oh, I get that. It's nice. I had to bring the old ball and chain tonight. My husband. Hi, Oscar. I'm a very long way from home, from Australia. If you'd told me 6 years ago that I'd be standing here in Washington, D.C., talking to you about this issue, I would have thought you were nuts. The reason I'm standing here is because we're just a little well known in Australia, and I have 2 adopted children, as you've heard, Oscar and Ava, and so many Australian families would come up to me and say, we'd love to adopt, we'd love to provide a home for a child, but it's just so damn hard. And I kept hearing this over and over. And I just one day said, why? And spoke up about it and ended up speaking to a newspaper, and it began my journey. It opened a can of worms in Australia, and it began my journey and my education as to why it was happening like that. We tried to adopt in Australia, and we came up against roadblocks because of our past history with adoption in Australia, which was established in 2005 in an inquiry that it was an anti-adoption culture. Now I say that and people go, what? They don't understand it. And so it's based on past practices we had with the stolen generation of Aboriginal children, and in the 50s, 60s and 70s, single mothers were forced to relinquish their children. State and church and families forced them to do this. They deemed them unfit because they were single parents, and it was not the rigor of the day. So anyway, this is where we came from, and this is why it is tainted in Australia and why we are not doing it well. We are one of the lowest countries in the world in inter-country adoption. So I started speaking up about this, and we, with like-minded people, established National Adoption Awareness Week. And the first year out, our first thing was, let's talk about adoption. For a long time, it had been secrecy and shame and a stigma. And no one was talking about it. We said, let's talk about it, you know, bring it out. And it was giving the freedom for adoptees to talk about it, and it was paving the way for the new kids that were traveling this path. We did a CSA with Elmo. I met with the Sesame Street people in New York and said, will you do something for us? So we had Elmo and I talking. He's like, Deborra-lee, tell me about adoption. And so I had a little chat with him. Oscar got to meet him. They didn't get along, but it's okay. It's another story. Because I wanted that to be there for the kids so that they see their hero talking about their journey, and that they could explain to their friends how they got there. And it was someone that they all knew and that could relate to, so it wasn't this sort of secret thing or something that was taboo to talk about. Anyway, I ended up moving over here to America, and I continued what we'd started down there. And I had a forum last year to speak at the Press Gallery in Canberra, which was really scary. And I had to talk for an hour about the history of adoption and address the issues. And when I had to do that, I befriended the American community and met with Kathleen Strottman here at CCAI, who jumped up. Tom DeFilippo, who's here tonight, the Joint Council, Jane Aronson. There was a whole troop of them. I said, I have this forum in Australia and I want to get it right. Will you help me? So they all traveled into New York. We sat around and we did a big powwow on what the issues were. They were educating me because I'm not an expert in this field, but I wanted to be a part of shining the light on it. So they educated me and told me what to say, and that began our relationship. I was so touched when they said I was coming here to get this award, and we came up last night. We traveled up from New York to Senator Landra and Frank's that had held the party last night. I met a whole lot of you there. And I'm just thrilled to be joining with these incredibly powerful women. I mean, everyone at CCAI that I've met is so enthusiastic and creative and passionate and wants to put this front and center. I can't think of anything that's more important than children's issues and making sure that every child finds a family. And I love that because of this unity, I'm going to take this back to Australia. And our ambassador's here tonight, Kim Beasley. Kim, you need to speak to our peeps back home and make sure we get this right. But I'm so thrilled to have met you guys, and this is just the beginning of our relationship. We had lunch today at a great restaurant in town to put creativity and energy into shining a light on this issue. As they say in a family, it takes a village. This is a village. It's a global village, and I can't wait to work with everyone here in doing this. I just want to say my son wanted to mention, and he wanted to come up here tonight, which he doesn't usually want to do. So I want to invite my son up. This is Oscar Jackman. Oscar recently did because we all want to know where we came from. You want me to share that? Yeah. Okay. There's a Google thing called 23andMe. It's a DNA test. And I think of a lot of adoptive kids who don't necessarily have the paperwork where they come from, do a spit test and they find out their lineage. And Oscar found out, Okay, he's a quarter. Is it a quarter? Anyway, he found out he's from North Africa and Bosnia in his background, and he's been reading all about it, and he's very proud of that. Anyway, thank you guys. I'm thrilled to be here, and I really appreciate this. Thank you. I'm sorry. My mum's come all the way here from Australia, Mum. I didn't even mention you. And Uncle Irving, who I've grown up with, and Oscar, they all came up to be with me here tonight. And I'm thrilled you're here, Mum. I can't believe I forgot my mum.